There's one particular mass killing that we really focused on in a prison in Mirab Abaya, and we spoke to a number of witnesses to that killing. We spoke to medical personnel who treated survivors, residents, and that was about 83 prisoners killed in a single afternoon when their guards turned on them. I've also managed to speak to the families of some of those prisoners who've been notified that their loved ones died, but were simply told that they died in the line of duty and given no further details.
Mm-hmm. Overall, how many soldiers are we talking about here, and over what period of time, do we know?
I've tracked killings of prisoners, sometimes individually, sometimes in small groups, and then there was the larger group, in 8 prisons. A lot of them occurred about a year ago when Tigrayan forces were advancing on the capital, Addis Ababa, but they've also occurred during different times. It's not clear how far up the chain of responsibility these killings were ordered or how far they're the work of individual guards. In the case of the mass killing at Mirab Abaya, the man in charge of the camp actually did intervene to stop the killing when he arrived back, and later told prisoners that those guards had been arrested and charged, but we just haven't been able to confirm that with the government.
So we'll talk about the government in just a moment, but just give us more details about who's carrying out these killings. The guards, civilians as well?
So most of the killings have been carried out by prison guards, that's members of the Ethiopian military. And in one case in Mirab Abaya, the local population took part as well. They hunted down escapees from the prison camps with machetes and hacked them apart, basically. We had some very distressing testimony from a resident who was a witness to the killing of one man who had his hands cut off and was being sort of tortured and killed by residents there. He said that residents had been told that these men were prisoners of war, which is not true. They were members of the Ethiopian military who were detained, they say, due to their ethnicity. But he said the local population had been told that they were prisoners of war and responsible for the deaths of local men in the military.
Mm-hmm. I know it sounds gory, but I want to understand how they dispose of the bodies. Where do they hide them? Because that is the evidence. And also it raises questions around family members and whether or not they can bury their dead.
That varied according to prisons. In some cases, prisoners were buried in the prison. In some cases, one prisoner said he saw bodies thrown outside. In the case of the mass killing at Mirab Abaya, we had 7 witnesses who told us about a mass grave near the main watchtower at the entrance to the camp, and they described a bulldozer being used to bury these bodies. So we've got satellite imagery, and we've got a fairly good idea where that grave is.
That's some overwhelming evidence there. What are the chances that there'll be some accountability or recourse and, the reaction from Ethiopia?
So far, unfortunately, we haven't been able to get any comment from the government. We did reach the military spokesman, but he said he was too busy to comment. So this conflict has been marked by a lot of abuses on all sides, and the current sort of peace deal doesn't really have a clear mechanism for accountability. So I think the way that the government reacts to this will be indicative of how they might react to other injustices or crimes that may have been committed during this conflict.